What's good, everybody? Welcome in to the Early Edge and our Week 6. Can you believe it? Our Week 6 NFL Mega Preview. I'm your boy, the coach. This is your sports betting brand of record. We are powered, as always, by the almighty SportsLine, the best value in all sports betting. And it's not even close. All of the odds on the Early Edge are provided by the king of all sports books, BetMGM. As we know, bye weeks have already started a couple weeks ago. So we got a lot of teams, a lot of things that are going on. But when you get to Week 6, you either start going this way or you start going that way. On this show, if you're new, we break down every single game starting with Thursday Night Football with two of the best NFL minds in the country. Let's bring in the stars of the show. You know him. You love him. The stoic one, RJ White, is here. The maestro, Larry Hartstein, is here. Gentlemen. How was Week 5 for you both? RJ, let's start with you.
It was great, except for the Bills game and then the Longhorns. While we're at it, both my teams over both my shoulders here coming up. Disappointing, but it was pretty good. Some good calls, some bad calls, but you always get that. Had a feeling about the Steelers covering with the Ravens. It just didn't make that much sense. But Pittsburgh just always finds ways to cover, and so a lot of times win these games. So you just kind of have to feel for those situations when those type of games are coming.
100%. Maestro, what about you?
Yeah, overall, it was kind of a wash, but I was glad that I was 2-0 on this show to get me to 7-4 on the season, and that the officiating angles article went 3-0. That's up to 10-5, and my best bets also continued to do well. That's up to 11-4. So at least the ones that we are highlighting are hitting at a very good rate.
Fantastic. And oh, by the way, right before we started this show live, I take my TikTok lock of the week, and I'm hitting at an 80% clip right now. I encourage you guys to go to social media. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Go to social media. You'll find it there. You can agree or you can disagree. By the way, we have a new schedule here at the Early Edge. This show, if you're not watching it live, you can watch it all the way up. Sunday morning, we repost it again. No more 10 a.m. show. We go noon, 7:30. This is our morning show to get you set for a full NFL Sunday. So, gentlemen, if you don't mind, let's get started. Thursday Night Football. And this one on paper, an absolute mismatch. The Denver Broncos are a mess. They just lost by 10 to the New York Jets. By 10 at home to the New York Jets. We saw Sean Payton fighting with Russell Wilson on the sidelines. And now, what's the worst thing that could happen, Maestro, to a team like that? Or actually, RJ, I'm going to start with you. And that is welcoming the reigning, defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. The number's 10.5. The total 47.5. Thursday Night Football. Let's start there. You're up.
Are these the reigning champion Chiefs? They haven't really looked like it through 5 weeks. Still look good. I still bet they're over, and I'm still confident they're over. But they're 10th in yards per pass. The downfield element just seems missing against Minnesota. I think part of that is the receivers that Patrick Mahomes is throwing to. I don't know who we can get comfortable with because it doesn't seem like trust a lot of these guys. But the remedy could be facing a horrendous Denver pass defense, averaging almost 7 yards per play allowed. And Kansas City's offense can get touchdowns in the red zone, where that's where the Jets struggled. They had 31 points in that game, could have had a lot more, just could not get anything done in the red zone. And you would figure that Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have that problem. Denver's offense, also terrible. 5 drives with negative yards, including 4 in a row against the Jets defense that hasn't played up to expectations either. So that's the pro Kansas City side. The anti Kansas City side is that, the Kelsey banged up. Who knows if he plays? I think he's practicing today. We'll see if he's out there. And if he's not out there, can Mahomes, trust any of his other pass catchers? And will the weather cooperate? It could be upwards of 20-mile-per-hour winds in this game. We know that really affects passing once you get above that level. If this is a run game, that really benefits Denver and helps them stay in the game where they're better running the ball. And Kansas City's worse at defending the run. So I have a pick in this game. You can go find it on sportsline.com. At 10.5, I think there is a clear side. So go check that out.
Yeah, this seems like one of those, whenever it's a Thursday night game, you have such a big spread. It's really hard to figure out what team's going to show up, Maestro. But RJ brings up a lot of good points, and he brought up the word running. Isaiah Pacheco has been a guy that the Chiefs have really started leaning into as their offense, as RJ said, has not been dynamic yet. Your thoughts?
Yeah, they're going to have a field day running the football. I mean, we saw what Breece Hall did. There was nobody near him as he ran 70-plus yards for a touchdown against this horrific Denver defense. And, yeah, that's the one thing that's going to keep people thinking about the Broncos is you've got the weather, you've got a short week, you've got Kelsey status, and you know the Chiefs really just want to get out of here on a short week without injuries and just get the win. And Patrick Mahomes has not been good covering the big numbers. And this is obviously a very huge spread, but the Denver Broncos are not getting my money.
You know the Broncos aren't getting my money either. By the way, Jacob or Jared, I see you. He says nothing better than the stoic one, the maestro and the coach on a Tuesday afternoon. Guess what? We agree. We agree. Some of you are asking that you don't do TikTok. I already posted it to my Twitter, too. You can go look there on Twitter. Don't even worry about it. All right, now, speaking of the Ravens, RJ, that you just talked about, and Maestro, I'm starting with you. Ravens are favored by 4, and they've kind of been all over the place. They blow out the Browns, and then they can't even do anything other than 10 ugly points against the Steelers, and then they're going to go to Tennessee, and they're favored by 4. This number, to me, Maestro, doesn't make any sense. Talk to me.
Well, they're going to London. This game is in London, and that's why you have the spread where it is. But you know, they were up 10-3. They were going to make it 17-3. They were dominating. Lamar Jackson, very ill-advised interception in the end zone. But aside from that, he played well. He had so many drops. I believe it was 7 drops, 2 sure touchdowns that were drops. I mean, you can't put the ball better than he did in some of those spots. So the receivers completely let him down. I still think they're a far superior team, or let's say substantially better than the Titans, who were supposed to be great against the run, and they got run over by the Indianapolis Colts, and now they have to go across the pond. I'm going to lean Ravens here. I'm going to wait for a better number because I think there's a clear side. I just can't imagine Baltimore dropping all those passes again.
And clearly I'm an idiot because Snake put it right there. London game, coach. This is the London game. I'm a moron. Sometimes I miss that, especially I'm going to email where I do my handicapping. They didn't even put that it's the London game there. Some don't. I need to be better. So, RJ, Maestro said he's waiting for maybe a little bit of a better number here. What about you?
The better number was there. It was 3 at one point. It crawled back up to 4. So I think a lot of people said that's too little, letting Baltimore lay 3 because they see what Larry saw. Should have been a lot more points in that game. Bad drops, rare red zone struggles. They typically been pretty good in the red zone, and Lamar's playing very well. Their offense is still 3rd in red zone rate, though, and 8th on 3rd down. Solid in both the pass and run. Tennessee's offense featuring Henry less. We're seeing Tyjae Spears play a lot more than is typical at this point. So Derrick Henry, those games that he dominates, he's not getting that much of an opportunity anymore. And that really only makes Hopkins the real threat of the offense. And sometimes he has these big games where he can go off like he did against Indy to some extent. Didn't really help them win the game. Baltimore's defense, 2nd in yards per play, 1st in yards per rush, 1st in red zone rate. We said last week they haven't played very many good quarterbacks. Hurt Burrow, 2 backup quarterbacks in that group. Tennessee didn't have a great quarterback either. It's more of the same. They played well last week against Kenny Pickett. Probably going to play well against this offense here. That rush defense did fall apart. It was a lot of injuries, I think. We'll see how many of those players pop up on the injury report and are able to play. Maybe they have a little bounce back there. But the pass defense is still struggling, and Lamar's playing well enough. They should be able to score. It's hard to go against Vrabel. He's tough as an underdog. Good history against Baltimore. Remember that big upset in the playoffs that one year? But I think they're pretty much overmatched here. I didn't agree with the 3. I'm glad it's raised because I think the line probably should be a little bit higher than this, around 5.
And you're probably right. And Cody in the chat says, Ravens go for the kill. No more messing around with weak teams. And this is the time of the year where that starts to make a lot of sense, Cody. It really does. You can't mess around with these teams anymore. You got to come in laser focused, like this next game. And RJ, I'm starting with you. When you talk about the Atlanta Falcons, they have played so many close games. In fact, they were losing to Houston until the very end of the game, barely sneaked by. They barely got by the Packers. It's a low spread again this week, 2.5 at home against Washington, total at 42. Your thoughts?
So many close games and a lot of them against some not great teams. Packers have proven not to be great, and that was a close one. That Texans game really beat up Texans team. So it's interesting to see who this Atlanta team is. The offense off a rare good passing day, and I think part of that was the defense they faced. That defense couldn't really stop. They're facing a defense that couldn't stop Chicago last week. So maybe they continue to have a good passing day here. They just added Van Jefferson. I know he's not going to play a big role, but it's interesting that they want to add more pass catchers when they don't use the ones they have. Fantasy owners are probably complaining about that. They've looked much better than Houston overall. I was surprised that score was close in that game. Their defense is 7th in yards per play, 5th in third down rate, 5th in red zone rate. They can stop bad offenses. And Washington kind of looks like a bad offense at this point. They're solid in running the ball, 8th in yards per rush. Don't do much else great. Featuring Logan Thomas here because for whatever reason they can't trust their receivers at this point. Off that embarrassing loss, maybe they're focused. Maybe Washington can outplay the metrics. And Atlanta's not really capable of blowouts. So I would lean to Washington, but I want to get it at 3 because I think that's just the formula for Atlanta playing all these close games. If I can get 3 against them with a team that's not literally like basement level, like the Panthers or Bears, I think that's probably a good look.
Isn't it amazing how the narrative changes? Washington's 2-0. It's all good. Now they lose 3 in a row, and all these things start coming up that RJ pointed out. And Maestro, I'm starting to read articles about maybe there should be a head coaching change. Maybe Eric Bieniemy isn't the offensive coach that we thought he was coming from Kansas City. Washington has a lot of issues right now.
I agree. I think not going for 2 with the chance to take down the defending NFC champs was kind of a blow to the team. And they squandered a chance to have a signature win. And now their only wins are against the Cardinals and the Broncos. And yeah, they did have extra rest, but Desmond Ridder, 28 of 37, 329, and he's 5-0 at home. The guy plays well at home. He's terrible on the road. He looks like the worst quarterback in football on the road. So at less than 3, I'm leaning Atlanta. I think it's going to go back towards pick'em. I don't think it's going to go to 3. I'm waiting for a better number on the Falcons.
Okay. Maybe we're waiting for a better number on the Vikings as well. That's our next game. And you talk about 2 teams that desperately need a win. They're both 1-4. Vikings favored by 2.5 in Chicago. The Bears look much better, though, in their last game. Their offense was clicking. Justin Fields played absolutely phenomenal. And I wonder, Maestro, do you think the wrong team is favored here when we probably know that Justin Jefferson will not play? Hamstring injuries are difficult to come back from. He's been quite questionable, but I don't think he plays this week. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he's definitely out. That's a huge blow. They still have some very talented receivers, and they still have a good offense, but I think the Bears have gotten it going offensively 2 straight games now. You know, they played well against Denver, and then they carried it over against Washington. But at less than 3, I can't take Chicago. I need 3. I need 3.5. The Vikings still are the better team. And this is another game that is going to be impacted by weather. You got to check out the winds, probably 20 miles per hour. There's going to be rain. So in my mind, that would favor the Bears, though, because I think they're a better running team than the Vikings.
We always have new people dropping in that are new to sports betting or new to NFL betting. Kind of what Maestro's talking about. The key numbers that we hit are 3, 7, and 10. You get through those, and those can be very pivotal half or full points. Great analysis by you, Maestro. RJ, let me come to you. Are the Vikings the right team to be favored on the road in Chicago?
Yeah, I think they are. I think they're the better team. Larry said it's going to come down to running with the weather. I don't know who's running the ball for the Bears besides Justin Fields. Khalil Herbert, I think, is a multi-week injury is expected. Roshan Johnson dealing with concussion. Because that game was on Thursday, we'll see if he gets cleared in time for this game. Travis Homer is also dealing with an injury. So Deontay Foreman, who they haven't activated the last few weeks, might be the lead rusher in this game, and then practice squatters from there. So we'll see if that makes a difference. The offense had been hitting their stride up to 11th in yards per play, 12th in yards per pass. Surprising to see from Justin Fields, considering how much grief he took, to this point in his career as a passer. So if they can't rely on the running backs, if for whatever reason they're not going to give Deontay Foreman a lot of carries, the offense becomes more predictable, and then it's just shutting down for the most part DJ Moore. Minnesota's defense is solid 12th in yards per play, and that's despite facing the Eagles, the Chargers, and the Chiefs on their schedule. So I think they're actually playing pretty well on defense, a lot better than anybody would have expected. Jefferson injury is huge, but they do have the weapons to overcome it, especially against a defense like Chicago, which is 31st in yards per pass. I think that Jefferson injury is going to be a big issue long-term. This probably isn't going to be the week for it. Even though my power ratings would say go Bears, I think they win this game by 3. So I would lean to Minnesota if you're going to get less than 3.
They're probably saying, thank you, Lord, that we're not facing Kansas City again or the Chargers, it's just like an or. By the way, big shout out to a new member of the Early Edge universe, Uncle Skunkle. How about that? He said, I just subscribed, been listening on Spotify, and finally caught a live show. Zach says, hey, live shows, Uncle Skunkle, it's where it's at. What has my career come to that I'm literally saying Uncle Skunkle on an NFL Mega Preview? That's what we love about this show and this brand. Welcome. You'll be taken care of in the chat. Don't even worry about it. Now, Uncle Skunkle, all of us right here, RJ, Maestro, myself, this isn't the only place. We are everywhere at CBS, just dropping knowledge, dropping nuggets. But one place that you can always catch us, Snake.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
I kind of feel that way about the NFL. Anywhere, all the time. You're damn right. Now, we continue on with the 1 o'clock games. You're watching the Early Edge Week 6 NFL Mega Preview. All the odds presented by BetMGM. Now, this is a matchup, gentlemen, of a couple of teams that have kind of a split personality. One week, they'll play great. The next week, you're like, what happened? And then they come right back to playing great again. But, RJ, you have a best bet in this game. Bengals laying 3 at home, total 45.5. Who do you like?
Love the Seahawks here. I was aggressive moving Cincy up in the power ratings because I knew once Joe Burrow starts looking healthy, they're a team that should be ranked among the top 5 or 6 in the league based on what we've seen from him in the past. I didn't obviously rank him up that high, but I went a lot higher and aggressive moving their rating. Still couldn't get this 1-3 because this Seattle team has actually played very well aside from the week 1 collapse against the Rams. Since that offense, it looked like they came out of the basement against Arizona. It was really only 4.8 yards per play in the breakout. His deep passing didn't look great in that game aside from that one Jamar Chase touchdown. You take that touchdown away, it's the same 4 yards per play that they've been doing from here on out. So I think it's a little bit of a over exaggeration that they're fully back, even though I have moved them up some because he actually did look healthy. Seattle, on the other hand, had the bye to get healthy. You're dealing with a lot of injuries before the bye, playing well, but after that collapse. And then talk about the weather, another weather game, which I'm sure Larry will point out. Cincy's defense 30th in yards per rush, and we know Seattle and Pete Carroll want to run the ball. And the weather should give them the perfect opportunity here to run the ball. Seattle's defense first in yards per rush. So Cincinnati doesn't run the ball well anyway, and they're not going to do it against this defense. So it's going to rely on Burrow's arm, which has been kind of shaky to this point. I think Seattle's going to win this game. I love getting the full 3 here. That's why Seattle's the best bet for me.
We have learned over the last few years, Maestro, that if you want to go opposite RJ White, you're taking your sports betting live into your own hands. Do you agree with the Seahawks +3?
Wholeheartedly, I'm going to be on them as well. I mean, this team, top 10 in offense, top 10 in defense. Witherspoon and Woolen in the secondary. They're getting healthier on the back end. Is T. Higgins going to play? I'm not so impressed by what Joe Burrow did against the Cardinals' non-existent defense. I think this Seattle team is the team we thought entering the season. You know, they had that terrible week 1 second half against the Rams where they got like 10 yards and no first downs, and they lost both starting tackles. Since then, they have played great football, coming off of a bye, getting a full 3. I love it for the Seahawks.
All right. Now, we got to get to this next game very, very quickly. I just got a text from my man, the Snake, who's already over it, all over it. And I said a few minutes ago when I posted this on Twitter, if you don't get this right now, you may not be able to get it under 7. I cannot believe, Maestro, because clearly you saw the same thing that I saw. The 49ers, the way these two teams match up, the way the numbers fall, to me, this should be 8, 9, maybe even 10, and it's below 6, and now it's right at 6. This is a best bet for you.
It is. I locked it in at 4.5 on SportsLine yesterday and bet it personally. I will still play it up to 7. Now, Deshaun Watson, if he doesn't play, this will close over a touchdown. When you're talking about DTR or maybe PJ Walker, who's splitting the first team reps, we'll see tomorrow with the first official practice report. But he has a contusion in his rotator cuff. That doesn't sound good. You know, that's your throwing shoulder. So, and then Joel Bitonio seen on crutches. You've already lost Jack Conklin. Posick, the center, also injured, was not around Monday, and they had the bye. Now, the 49ers come off a monumental win, but that was also like a bye because the Cowboys didn't show up. They just destroyed the Cowboys, and they didn't even have their starters in late in that game. So I think the 49ers will be fresh. And again, with a weather game, their ground game sets up perfectly to go in and dominate, especially when you look at the defensive line of the 49ers against a banged up Browns offensive line. Absolutely love this spot. They've scored 30 in every game, but I don't think they need 30 to cover less than a touchdown here. I think 27-24 should be enough because I don't see the Browns getting over 17.
Well, there's been one team, that has scored more than 16 points against the 49ers this year. 1. 30 only won over 16. That's 14 points minimum. That's why I thought this should be 8, 9, or 10. They don't give up any points, and they score a lot. I think hopefully we'll have 2 or 3 more weeks where we get a really good number on San Francisco, because you guys know by the second half of the season, RJ, we're going to be looking at lines of 10, 11, 12 and have to go the other way. What about this one for you, RJ?
Yeah, I'm a little bit in a disagreement here. San Francisco, my best power ratings team, 8 points better than average. But Cleveland I have as average coming out of the bye, and that's if Deshaun Watson plays. You talk about the weather. This total was 41.5. It's cratered down to 37.5. Some of that may be Deshaun related. I think a lot of it has to do with the weather, where we're seeing these totals kind of move down in these games. And if you're going to have a game where Cleveland can compete, shouldn't it be at home in one of these random, weird weather, windy games where they can run the ball? Don't have Nick Chubb. Jerome Ford has had his moments. I'm not suggesting he can perform like Nick Chubb, but if you're going to get an ugly like 19 to 14 type of game, a couple missed field goals there, and Cleveland barely gets the cover, even if there should be a 6 point better, this line should be 6. I think that could happen. San Francisco, great team, top 3 yards per play, clearly NFL's best team. That's why I have them ranked high. Cleveland's defense, remember, ranked first in yards per play, second in sack rate. They can carry teams even if the offense isn't playing well and make these lower scoring games. So on the road for San Francisco, coming off a massive win, they feel like they're probably the Super Bowl favorites coming off of that win. I think this is the time where you want to attack them. Maybe the line's going to get slightly too much inflated as we've seen it go up and up and up. And around 6 is when I'm going to start thinking about playing the Browns, but I want to see some injury news that other guys Larry was talking about, particularly Watson, before I jump in with the Browns.
And this would be a great time to tell you that if you're a SportsLine member, the Sims, they're always changing. The articles, changing. Picks, they're always changing. But you got to be a SportsLine member to be able to go through and educate yourself. Well, guess what? I'm going to do you a solid right here, right now. Quarterly plan, 60% off. There's so many of you new dropping in every single show. We want everybody. Use the promo code COACH. QR code, sportsline.com/join, and you get everything. Remember, quarterly plan, not monthly, not yearly, quarterly, 60% off using the promo code COACH. I promise you, there is no better value in all of sports betting. Now, this next game, and RJ, I'm starting with you. There was some heartbreak last week. If you were an over better in the Miami game and you did not buy a half or a full point, they were sitting at 43 heading into the fourth quarter. They managed 3 points to sit on, 44, and then they closed at 47. Now, I always buy my overs down. I always do, at least a point. So I cashed. Others, they did not. We also found out, RJ, that people said that spread was too high. It was 12.5. The Dolphins covered. This week, it's a point higher, 13.5 according to BetMGM. Total 48.5 against the Panthers, who are still trying to figure out if Bryce Young should be the starting quarterback. Your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, and it came down slightly. Devon Achane changes his pronunciation of his name every week. She'll try to get used to it. Achane is going to be out. It looks like for this game, been so electric, can score from anywhere. So I think that's why the numbers tick down a little bit. Carolina coming off supposedly a good offensive game, scored 24 points. They had 2 garbage time touchdowns, so 2 75-yard touchdown drives when they were down 35-10 and then 42-17. It didn't matter at all. Their defense dominated by a shorthand Detroit offense, missing a lot of players. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs. So I don't even think that Gibbs was expected to be missing, and all of a sudden they just do whatever they want to. I just think they're hard to trust now when I thought that they were actually playing pretty well defensively. Miami's defense rolled the Giants offense. The scoring there was boosted by a pick 6 by the Giants and short field goal drives. But I think that was really even a bigger blowout than was on the scoreboard. Look ahead was only minus 10.5. I'm not looking to fade the inflation. If anything, I'm probably going to play Miami because I don't really think they need Achane here. So if it's going to be on this game, it's going to be Miami. Just can't touch Panthers hanging with this offense.
I saw a pretty funny interview, Mike McDaniels, I don't know if you saw it, Maestro, where some journalist from probably, KCOL in West Palm said, "Hey, Mike, through 5 games, you've broken every record, 1999, fastest, what do you think when you hear that? Did you see this?"
No.
And he goes, "Oh, we've reached all of our goals. We've done everything." And then he went, like, he's so sarcastic because he understands it's the long game. But right now, outside of the Buffalo game, Miami and Tua look really, really good offensively. When their defense catches up, they might be a contender coming out of the very difficult AFC. Your thoughts on Miami 13.5?
Tua 14-5 against the number at home. I expect another blowout. They put up 524 yards against the Giants. So I agree with RJ. The score should have been worse. Should have been a worse blowout. Now you get a Panthers team probably looking ahead to their bye, which is next week, and maybe they can recalibrate, do something different for Bryce Young, because whatever they're doing is not working. And now the defense is starting to fall apart too, because the defense played well for a few weeks, but they've had injuries and their offense can't stay on the field. They have some easy matchups after the bye. That's their best chance for a win. Anything less than 2 touchdowns, I'm looking towards the Dolphins.
Yeah. I tell you what, a lot of good suggestions in the chat from our very, very smart early edge universe. Perhaps touchdowns is a way to go with Miami. Perhaps team total is a way to go with Miami. Whatever you want, use the information from my guys for whatever bet you want to make. Now, where are you going to bet? Well, hundreds. And now we're into the thousands of you have signed up here, and we're so appreciative of that. New BetMGM customers can sign up today and get $200 in bonus bets. Just place your first wager of at least $10, and you'll receive $200 instantly in bonus bets, regardless of your wager's outcome, with bonus code EDGE200. And I told you on the morning show, we did that new little game. Well, most of you didn't like it. So we're going to talk to BetMGM, and I told you we're very transparent. We're going to do a lot of good, fun things exclusively for you. Just got to talk to them. That's it. So be patient, but I promise you we have your best interest at heart. Now, this next game, interesting because, Maestro, it is a best bet for you. Indianapolis, with their dynamic young quarterback, who's going to miss again this week now with another injury, they've been really, really good. They travel to Jacksonville. Jaguars, they've been gone for 2 full weeks playing both games in London, winning both games in London. So now, according to BetMGM, they are favored by 4.5, total 45.5. Which side is your best bet?
I think this is a great spot for the Colts. You know, they lost by 10 in week 1 to the Jaguars, but had a chance. They were on the goal line, had a chance to cover that game. And now they're playing the Jags, who are coming off like a Super Bowl win, taking down a Bills team that people thought was invincible. They had destroyed 3 straight teams in historic fashion, and the Jags took them down. But no team has ever done this. Stayed 2 weeks in London and now come home without a bye, having to face their old friend Gardner Minshew, who played for Jacksonville for 2 seasons. Gardner Minshew is completing 68% of his throws, has not thrown an interception. He has not taken any first-team reps because every time he's come in for the injured Anthony Richardson. This week, they are going to be able to design some plays for him because he's the guy taking all the reps this week with Richardson out. And if you just look at what the Colts did to the Titans had been stopping the run, and then the Colts ran all over them, not even with Jonathan Taylor, who's back. And they got some good plays down the field from downs. I just think it's all shaping up as a very tight game that comes down to a field goal. Trevor Lawrence 0-5 against the number when laying 4 or more points. And here we've got 4.5. And one more thing I want to say, this offensive line for the Colts, they were just mauling the Titans, and they are top in so many metrics like run blocking, creating yards before the running back is even contacted. And that should be very important because the Jags are tough against the run, but Tennessee was even tougher and they couldn't stop the Colts.
I'm so glad you brought up Jonathan Taylor, 3 years, $42 million. And don't think for a second that he would have come back if he didn't think this team was a really good squad this year. RJ, nobody watches the Bills closer than you. Jacksonville got it done in an ugly game against them. What did they do so well?
They hurt the Bills players, and the Bills defensive players left the game early, and Jacksonville was able to do kind of what they wanted offensively. I would have thought they would score more points than they scored, but good win for them. It's even a worse spot than Larry made out because not only did they play 2 weeks in London and now come home without a bye, they have to travel on Thursday next week. They have a Thursday game in New Orleans, and that's typically a poor spot where you're looking to fade teams anyway. Now you're fading the team coming off 2 straight London games. That makes it a terrible spot here. The market had been a little bit against this. This has driven this line down a bit to 4. And I think it's kind of a reaction to Gardner. Everybody loving Gardner Minshew, thinking that he might be just as good as Anthony Richardson. I'm not on that boat. I think that there is a drop off there, but this is the good matchup for him. It's a revenge game, team he knows. But the Jacksonville defense, 26th in yards per pass, 27th in sack rate. This is the type of team that Minshew should be able to have success against. While the Jacksonville offense is just 17th in yards per play, dominated the bad injured Buffalo run defense, was 32nd coming into that game. My take on Buffalo was that they would be able to have success because Jacksonville doesn't run the ball well. They decided to just give it to ETN and run the ball well all down Buffalo's throat, especially after those injuries to those key players up the middle. They also benefited from questionable flags. I'm not going to sit here and be a Bills fan griper. I know everybody saw that Poyer flag that was so super questionable, but there were other ones throughout the game that I didn't love either. So I didn't really upgrade the Jaguars coming out of that game, think that they're in this new tier because they beat this Bills team. And I hate the spot and matchup for them. So even though I think there is a drop off at quarterback, I agree with the line move. I agree with what Larry's saying. My lean is to Indy at 4.5.
I think the most important thing that RJ just said, we say it all the time here, use the information for the future. What did he say? When you play a team that allows a lot for the pass, Minshew's a great quarterback for that. Anthony Richardson uses his legs a lot. This would not be a good matchup for that. So you have to look at the matchup of quarterback versus team, and this is a good one for this backup quarterback. Plus, there's never been a market where backup quarterbacks have been more important than right now. That's why they're making $5 to $7 million a year as a backup. Next game, Houston Texans. They don't need a backup, RJ. They've got their quarterback for the future. And CJ Stroud, this may be a transitional year where they go 9-8 or 8-9, but there is certainly talent. They love their head coach, and they're home this week, and they're the underdog to the Saints, 1.5. And the total 42.5. Are you bullish on Houston? Not as a playoff team, but just a team that we can keep our eye on to be competitive every single week.
Maybe a playoff team. They play in the division for it, where anybody can really come out of there. New Orleans dominated New England in their game, but just 4.3 yards for playing to win. More like the New England offense couldn't do anything because they're so bad. When you look at New Orleans' season yards per play number, it equates to the Carolina offense. So as good as we think this team is, and it seems like they've been playing well, their offense really is just not getting it done despite the playmakers they have. Their defense, however, 4th in yards per play. They have faced a lot of limited pass offenses in their stretch of games, and Houston is 6th in yards per pass. We'll see how banged up they are coming out of the game. I think Tank Dell has a concussion. Robert Woods dealing with an injury. So it might be the Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz show. And they might be able to get it done because CJ Stroud, off to one of the best careers a rookie has ever been on as a quarterback. I believe he's either passed or approaching Dak Prescott for passes, attempts without an interception to start a career. So great job by him. Offense on a whole, 5.4 yards per play in Atlanta despite the injuries. Stroud still not throwing those interceptions. Their defense is certainly beatable if the New Orleans offense can get in rhythm. But the question is, can they do that? They've had struggles in the red zone for a lot of this season. My power ratings have New Orleans as 2 points better than Houston. If Houston's healthy, maybe these two teams are even because of how well Houston's been playing. And they could be getting some offensive line guys back at any moment. So my lean here would be Houston. I think this game probably should be pick 'em.
RJ brings up a good point, Maestro. Right now, they're just a game back. Everybody in this division has at least 2 wins, and Indianapolis and Jacksonville have 3 wins. So it's very bunched up right now through the first 5 games. How do you see this one?
I see this 20-17. I'm not sure which way, but I'm definitely looking under. I want to wait and see who the official is. The Saints have played 11 straight unders. They're averaging under 300 yards per game, as RJ mentioned, 289. And it's not like they had some massive offensive explosion to beat the Patriots. And then you get the Texans without Tank Dell and against a very good Saints defense and such a conservative coach in Dennis Allen. So I just love it for the under right now, sitting at 42.5. I just want to wait to see who the official is because some officials friendlier to unders than others.
All right, so that is the last 1 p.m. Eastern game. There's one at 4:05 and 3 at 4:25 as well. We'll get to those, but as you know, across all the platforms, we are one big company. And on CBS, one place where they're not conservative, the World Series of Poker.
CBS Sports Network goes all in with the World Series of Poker. We're talking a full house of characters in a competition flush with cash. The World Series of Poker on CBS Sports Network.
Found out on the morning show today, gentlemen, that the counselor, Sia Nejad, has cashed in the World Series of Poker main event. Did you guys know that?
I did know it because it's on his Twitter account, but I've yet to hear the actual story of his run, and I do want to get that from him.
Well, he did tell he got beat a full house over another full house, and it cost him probably a top 100 finish, which would have been probably 6 figures. So it's a great story. You got to ask him about it sometime. Now, right now, the Patriots and Raiders, well, Raiders feel a little bit better about themselves than the Patriots. The 2 worst losses in the Bill Belichick era. Back-to-back losses. Now, every show you listen to, Bill, step down. Make it easy on Robert Kraft. Don't make it difficult. We know that's not going to happen, but if we have 3 straight games like that, Maestro? It might happen. Raiders favored by 3 after that workmanlike win last night over the Green Bay Packers. Total 41.5. Are the Raiders for real?
I don't think they're for real, but they haven't scored 20 points in a game yet, despite having amazing star talent in terms of Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs and Jacoby Myers and a pretty good quarterback. So I don't have a lot of faith in their offense, and I have zero faith in the Patriots offense, which I believe has scored the fewest points in all of football right now. So I'm going to look under the total, under 41.5.
55 points is what New England has scored this year. RJ, what do we do with New England?
Well, last week we played them. We were like, they're going to come out, focused after that beatdown from Dallas, and they're going to be better against the Saints team that, for all the reasons we said earlier, might not be as strong as they look. And then they were absolutely worse against the Saints. So this week, +3, they've got to be a value at +3. My lean would be to them. I'm not going to play them, though. Their offense looks inept. Rookie place kicker that they moved on from their longtime veteran for looks awful. Will the easier matchup defense-wise supposedly help? I don't know. This offense just looks like it can't do anything. 10 of their 14 drives gained less than 10 yards against New Orleans. I don't know how you fix that. Their defense still solid despite the score, despite the injuries they had. Like I said, they held New Orleans to a low yards per play number. They can keep New England in games against bad teams, and this is a bad team that can't score, like Larry said. Vegas struggled to 4.4 yards per play in the win over a bad Green Bay team. Feels like a similar game to me. New England fooled me last week, so I'm not going to back them, but I would lean that way because there's not going to be a lot of points in this game, like Larry said. And just +3 is probably too much and a little bit of value on New England.
I heard a pretty good take today on a national radio show. I can't remember who it was, but they said everybody outside of New England wants this to end so badly. And everybody in New England wants this to end somewhat amicably. But everybody thinks it's going to end at the end of the season. We'll have to wait to see. Now, 2 more teams that kind of got humbled over the weekend. I thought the Cardinals were going to take down the Bengals in Arizona. That didn't happen. In fact, they lost by double digits. The Rams, well, they got to experience just being suffocated by that Eagles defense, 23-14, losing by 9. So the Rams at home, favored by 6.5, the total 48.5. RJ, let's start with you.
Arizona was frisky for a few weeks. They may now be reverting to expectations here. Defense 25th in yards per pass, 30th on third down. I think it's going to be tough for them to stop this Rams pass offense with 2 legit number 1 receivers to go to. Either way that Stafford wants to in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Arizona's rush offense has been keeping them in games. Now James Conner's hurt, expected to miss multiple weeks. His backup is an undrafted rookie, I believe, Amari DiMercato out of TCU. I don't think he's going to pilot a big rushing attack here. And Rams defense mediocre versus the run, but they played San Francisco and Philly, shut down Seattle, Cincinnati. I think the offense can mount a big lead here. I don't trust Arizona to keep up on the arm of Josh Dobbs. I would lean to the Rams at -6.5, but this line's getting a little bit too inflated for me.
It does kind of feel that way, Maestro, that 2 teams that really haven't been able to figure it out. But one thing I know is this. Cardinals are already 4 games back in the division after 5 weeks. The Rams are 3 games back after 5 weeks. They both are in desperate need of a win. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would lean Rams, but I don't want to lay this big of a number. James Conner's loss was just devastating, averaging 5.4 yards per carry, such an important part of that offense. So I'm with RJ. I mean, Cooper Kupp back and Nacua, so now you have great weapons for Matthew Stafford, but it's a big number against kind of a suspect Rams defense. I could see the Cardinals getting in through the back door.
Okay. We'll keep our eye on that. Now, there is an East Coast game that is a 4:25 start on Sunday, and this one to me is very fascinating. And Maestro, you have a best bet in this game. The Eagles, this has been hovering around 6, and it went to 6.5, and now it's at 7 at BetMGM, total 41.5. Jets coming off a 10-point win. They scored 31. That included a scoop and score at the end of the game, but they got the job done in Denver. The Eagles, just like the 49ers, neck and neck as who's the best team. Who do you think is the best team?
I think the 49ers are the best team, but the best team for this game is clearly the Eagles. That was like a Super Bowl win for the Jets, beating Sean Payton after what he said about Nathaniel Hackett. So I jumped in on the Eagles at less than a touchdown. I wouldn't lay more than 7 with the Eagles, but I'm still okay with it. I think you will be able to get a 6.5 throughout the week, even though you're seeing most books at 7 right now. I mean, the Jets need to run the ball to have any shot of success in this game. They lost their best offensive lineman in Vera Tucker. Dwayne Brown is still on IR. The Eagles don't allow you to run. 61 yards rushing per game is all they give up. So they are going to maul that Jets front. They are going to get after Zach Wilson. This could get really ugly. I mean, the main point is that when the Jets hosted the Chiefs closed at 8.5. That line was 7.5 to 9.5 throughout the week, and it was always over a touchdown. So I just do not see why the Eagles opened at 6, and I think the move is definitely the right way to go.
That is the big question, RJ. Why do you think this number didn't start at least where the Kansas City number did?
Well, the Jets covered that game, and then the Jets went out and won this week. So the market might be a little bit more optimistic on the Jets. They had 31 points, but their offense was 0-for-5 in the red zone against the worst defense maybe in history through 5 weeks. So I think that's not a good look for their offense, even though they put up a big point total. Philly, like Larry said, their defense first in rush yards per game, also fourth in yards per rush. This has got to be a Zach Wilson game for them to compete, and you never want to hear those words. The rush game isn't going to help them here, like it did against Kansas City. The Jets defense not quite living up to expectations, now dealing with injuries in the secondary. That's going to be bad news for this A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith passing game. That sounds, of course, a great run game with it too. They're top 7 in both yards per pass and yards per rush. They should score on anyone, especially this defense that isn't playing as well as we expected. The offense for the Jets not good enough to keep up versus good defenses. I think this is going to be a rout. My number here says it should be 9, so I'm not surprised by this move. I just think it's going to keep going up.
All right. Very, very good. Now, the last 425 game on Sunday. If I would have told you guys prior to week 1 that in week 6, look at all the matchups, which one would be the matchup between 2 first-place teams? How many of us would have picked this one? The Lions, they've won 3 in a row. They're 4-1. Their only loss overtime to the Seahawks. They're favored by 3. The Bucks coming off a bye week. They're 3-1. Obviously fresh. Baker Mayfield feeling himself, showing up at Texas, Oklahoma on College game day. He's back on top of the world. But he's got a very difficult Lions team to deal with this week. And as I look at my notes, RJ, you believe in Detroit, at least for this week, yes?
Yeah, I think this line should be 4.5. It's a value at 3, especially if their health is trending up in Detroit when they were a little bit more surprisingly banged up than we thought in that game with the injury report going into that game. And it didn't matter. They just completely routed the Panthers. Probably going to be healthier here. Tampa is better than the Panthers. I don't want to compare the two teams, but they were dominated in their one loss against a good team, and Detroit has proven to be a good team. Tampa Bay cannot run the ball. Detroit's defense 6th in yards per pass, and they dominate limited offenses, and I think that could happen here. Detroit's offense also 5th in yards per play, 4th in yards per pass, despite their cast of iffy receivers coming into the year, and then the one game without Amon-Ra St. Brown. Getting it done with Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams going to get more into the flow here, and then guys like Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond getting it done too. Guys that probably would not have a lot of success on 28 or 29 other teams in this league, and Detroit's figuring out a way to do it because they have the best offensive coordinator in the league. 3 is not enough for them to lay against what might be a mediocre team despite the record. Like I said, I think it's going to be 4.5. So love getting Detroit at the -3. It's going to be off this number. I think it's going to close at 3.5. So play it at 3 now.
In a funny comparison, Maestro, the Lions have scored 93 more points this year than New England. We're talking about their total points. But in this game, they've scored 64 more points than the Bucks. What do you make of this matchup?
Yeah, I make of the fact that when we saw the Bucks try to step up in class against the Eagles, it did not go well. And I put the Lions not as high as the Eagles, but they are trending that way. And it was very smart of them to rest all those players, or maybe they were seriously hurt enough that they couldn't play, but it turned out to be a great move because you didn't need them to beat the Panthers. And now hopefully some of those guys come back. I agree with RJ. I think this is just a little too light. It's Lions or pass.
Yeah. And maybe when it's -3, you can get a money line between -140, -160. If it's closer to -140, once in a while, I'll play that and just scrap the points altogether. It's up to you. Just take the information. Now, that's all the 1 o'clock games. That's all the 4 o'clock games. What about Sunday Night Football? I have to start with RJ because it's your squad. We're back home from London, licking our wounds, and you could not ask for a better team to come rolling into town when you need a bounce back week than the New York Football Giants. They stink. Bills 14, total 44.5. How confident are you, RJ?
Well, the Giants offense, 32nd in yards per play. Giants defense, 31st in yards per play. Probably the NFL's worst team at this point. Apologies to Panthers fans and anybody else that has gripes, because this team has been awful. How confident am I? If this was a team that wasn't coached by Bray and Daboll, I think they might lay the wood on them. But if anybody's going to know this team in and out and then how they like to play football and might be able to educate his defense on how to school Ken Dorsey a little bit, it's going to be this guy. I'm not necessarily think they're going to win this game. Touchdown versus Miami was on a long pick six, 2 field goal drives under 20 yards. They did not play well at all, despite scoring a decent amount of points. Buffalo offense should be able to throw all over the Giants, but why would they run up the score against Brian Daboll? I know they need to feel good. This is their ex-coach coming off a UK trip. They left super late. I think that was a bad move for them travel planning wise. Offense, I don't know if they're going to be firing on all cylinders here. I'm more worried about the defense, shorthanded at every level, like we talked about with Milano injury, Daquan Jones, Tre'Davious White. Even with the bad offense with the Giants, I think with all those injuries on the Buffalo side, backdoor is going to be open. With this humongous number, the only way I would look would be to the Giants at plus 14.
There may be one big, and forgive me if I didn't see anything today, but the hit that Daniel Jones took by Miami that knocked him out of the game, I don't know how healthy he'll be this week or if he's even going to play this week. They've got a pretty good backup, though. Maestro, your thoughts?
Well, they are, quote unquote, optimistic that he will come back from the neck injury to play. And it is a kind of a toothless Buffalo defense right now with all the injuries that RJ talked about. And Brian Daboll going back to Buffalo. If there's ever a game where the Giants would show some heart and play for their coach, this would be the game. Not to win, but at least not get embarrassed 40-0. So professionals did take 15 with the Giants, and that's why we've seen this come down to 14. But as RJ said, 32nd in offense and 31st in defense. I can't make the case to grab the points.
Did you just say Giants play with heart? Is that what you just said? Have you seen the Giants play this year, Larry Hartstein? Because I certainly have. Now, Monday Night Football. We're live at 7:30 on Sunday nights and on Monday nights, counting down to every single primetime game. This one, fascinating. You got the Chargers as the host, coming off a bye week, should be healthy or as healthy as they can be. They're 2-2, but they've got a dynamic offense. The Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott called the loss against San Francisco humbling, 42-10. Yet Dallas is still favored on the road, and the total is at 50.5. Larry, how is Dallas favored after the way they looked against Arizona, the way they looked against San Francisco, and going on the road to a pretty good Chargers team that has a horrible head coach?
Yeah, you make a good point. Are we reading too much into the beatdowns the Cowboys gave to really bad teams in their 3 victories? It probably should be around to pick them. I think we're going to see some points because last year the Chargers couldn't stop the run. Well, this year they can't stop the pass. They're giving up 300 passing yards per game. So I think it'd be a big bounce back for Dak Prescott. But on the other side, I think the Chargers are going to do what they do, which is attack down the field, especially with no Trayvon Diggs. It's not the same Cowboys defense. I'm going to look over the total. I think it's 27-24, a great primetime spot. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think the total is kind of the way that I would lean because you just don't know, RJ, what the teams are going to bring to the table. The last time we saw Justin Herbert, he put a splint on his hand, put a glove on his hand, and then Brandon Staley said, 4th and 1 from my own 34. Let's run a quarterback sneak with a one-handed quarterback. Really smart play call, if you ask me. What do I know? But now it's 2 weeks later. How healthy will that left hand be? How healthy will his team be? We don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, non-throwing hand, so I don't think it's going to affect him much in the passing game. They should be rested off a bye. Eckler likely back. Kellen Moore revenge game, as we know, coming from the Dallas organization. Dallas's pass defense was elite before the San Francisco game. Will Chargers have the same success against them that San Francisco had? Maybe not. Maybe the offensive calling isn't up to snuff there, and they did, of course, lose one of their big playmakers downfield in Mike Williams before last week heading into this game. The Chargers defense, 28th in yards per play, consistently underperforms. It should be a nice rebound spot for the Cowboys, I think. Dallas fans are going to dominate in the stands. So I think that that's going to be a key thing here. And I think Dan Quinn probably is going to outcoach Kellen Moore in this game. As good as an offensive coordinator everybody thinks Kellen Moore is, Dan Quinn might be the best defensive coordinator in the league. You talk about the Trevon Diggs injury being big for them. Deron Bland has stepped up. I think PFF might rate him as a top 3 or 4 cornerback right now. He's playing out of his mind well. So I don't know that it's that big of a drop off for them. It feels like the market's going to back the Chargers as underdogs here. I cannot trust them in close games. Just we see week in and week out. My lean here would be to the Cowboys.
I think Dan Quinn, isn't he the highest paid assistant in the entire NFL or close to it? I know they had to pay to keep him because he was on the front list for a lot of head coaching jobs, and Dallas kept him just like they did with Jason Garrett a few years ago, paying him, $4 million to be an assistant. Jerry Jones will pay his assistants to keep him. That's for damn sure. All right, grab your paper, grab your pencil. My guys go over their best bets in just 15 or 20 seconds each. RJ, start us off.
Seahawks +3 against the Bengals. That line is wrong. You can't favor the Seahawks, but I still think they're going to win that game. They're a much better team right now than the Bengals. Lions -3 at Tampa Bay. This is a step up in class for Tampa Bay. We saw what happened when they played the Eagles. Something similar is going to happen here. Lions will win this game in a pretty convincing fashion.
Maestro.
49ers, anything less than a touchdown. Will Deshaun Watson play? Will his best offensive lineman play? It's a bad spot for Cleveland against this 49ers defensive front. And then the Eagles at 7 or less against the Jets. They're not going to allow Breece Hall to run wild. They're going to make it miserable for Zach Wilson because they lost their best offensive lineman this week. The Jets did. And then the Colts getting 4.5 in Jacksonville, 2 weeks in London, coming off a Super Bowl type win over the Bills, a terrible travel spot for the Jags, and the Colts with Gardner Minshew going back to Jacksonville, keep it close.
I'm actually going to London on Thursday, gentlemen, so maybe I'll see the remnants of the NFL stuff in the airport there in London. But yes, I will be in London Thursday through Sunday for a big boxing event, so I'm fired up for that. But I will be back in time for this show next Tuesday. Don't even worry about it. And by the way, a reminder on our schedule. NFL dominates what we do. It's our bread and butter. Thursday, Sunday, Monday, prime time at 7:30 Eastern time. This show right here on Sunday morning, you're looking for the latest information or the information on the game right here. Rewatch it. Nobody's better than the Stoic One and Larry Hartstein, the Maestro. It's what we do. So I'm telling you, it doesn't get any better than that right there. There's only one thing left to do, and I believe you all know what that is. You've got your marching orders. Let's take all of these week 6 tickets straight to the pay window. For my entire crew, Lomo, Stoic One, Maestro, my man the Snake, always behind the scenes on the ones and the twos. I am simply the coach, trying to keep this train on said track every single weekday, at least 2 shows just for you, because we grind for you so we can win with you. It's truly what we're all about right here at the Early Edge. Good luck.